So the second part of topic 1 addresses the issue of sustainability in horticulture. What is it? What is its history and development? What are the issues? What are some of the issues faced? And just a few examples of some of the practices required to bring about horticultural sustainability. So this section of the module is based mainly on the contents of Chapter 1 of the book Sustainable Horticulture by Raymond Poinselot, and the chapter by Wainwright, Jordan and Day in the Australian book Horticulture, Plants for People and Places, as well as numerous other references which are listed at the end of the module. So if you would like to read a little bit more in detail about the topic of sustainable horticulture, then read these two references, which have links in the module. Sustainable horticulture is a very new discipline. The concept of sustainable agriculture is also quite new, and it appeared in the 1970s. And activity began in sustainable agriculture in the 1980s, but in horticulture it appeared somewhat later. However, there have been concepts of sustainability developed well before then, such as organics, regenerative agriculture, pictured in the slide, permaculture, biodynamic agriculture, integrated pest management, biological farming, ecological farming, alternative agriculture, agroecology, holistic farming, and perhaps a few others. To understand the concept of sustainable horticulture, it's necessary to understand the problems of conventional horticulture, which is often referred to as high input industrial agriculture, so that we understand what brought about the shift towards sustainability, what are the transition processes, and the actual changes that can and have occurred. So this part of the module briefly explores the roots of agriculture, horticulture, covers the recent history that gave rise to sustainable agriculture or horticulture, and we will then look at the definitions of sustainable horticulture and show that it involves not only profitability, but also conservation of natural resources, preservation of the environment, and society's sociological needs. Now, we learnt a little bit about this in AHT 101. So what we will also cover is why the need exists, and briefly explain some suggestions to bring about sustainability to horticulture. As we learned earlier in the first part of the module, agriculture and its horticultural component began some 10 to 12,000 years ago. And during these times, almost everyone farmed as a matter of self-sufficiency, as illustrated. Gradually, horticulture moved toward a model where farmers produced enough so that others could buy their surplus, and that led to trade. Pesticides and fertilizers in those days were natural products, and also very little natural resource energy was consumed. However, about 200 years ago, improved plows, planters, and harvesters increased farm mechanization, leading to improved production and efficiency even more. After World War II, the development of new chemical technologies made possible the switch from manure to chemical fertilizers. New chemical pesticides also allowed farmers to switch from natural checks on insect pests and diseases to control of pests and diseases with pesticides and fungicides, and also to move away from using cultivation to control weeds to utilizing herbicides. Labor-saving machines driven by fuels instead of horses or mules also appeared. Plant breeders gave us crops that thrived with these new technologies. Government policymakers aided farmers in their embrace of technology. Collectively, those changes ended the agrarian society and ushered in an era of fewer but highly productive farms that fed uh, the country with the help of technology. And this was so successful that it was termed the agricultural revolution or the green revolution. So over the past decades, the seeds of discontent have been sown. People started to question the cost of this high input industrial agriculture in terms of resources, environmental wellness, and societal values. Even as far back as the early 1900s, it gained momentum soon after World War II and really picked up in the 1960s. The organic farmers were the first group to publicly react to these problems. Such farmers advocated no chemicals, instead choosing to fertilize with manure or other natural nutrient sources, and to control pests with natural controls and control weeds by cultivation. Biodynamic farmers were another splinter group. The book Silent Spring by Rachel Carson in 1962 raised public consciousness about the dangers of pesticides. And eventually the concept of sustainable agriculture arose in the late 1970s. The likely first use of the term sustainable agriculture in print appeared in 1978. That was written by Robert Rodale. In 1980, organic farming achieved mainstream status, being recognized by the United States Department of Agriculture. Now, many individuals and institutions sought to redefine agriculture in terms of sustainability during the 1980s and into the 1990s. Many conventional farmers, governments, agricultural educators, and researchers, and especially manufacturers of agricultural chemicals, resisted the concept of sustainable agriculture. Some viewed sustainable agriculture as an attack against all that they stood for. Others thought that productivity would be compromised, and others dismissed it as a fringe movement. The fact that sustainable agriculture didn't have one voice certainly didn't help. Numerous groups in the United States and other countries jockeyed for position as the leaders of the movement. These groups advocated a number of styles of farming, including agroecology, biodynamic farming, biological agriculture, ecological agriculture, environmentally sound agriculture, low input sustainable agriculture, organic farming, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, holistic farming, and others. And this table provides some details of those various forms of sustainable agriculture or horticulture, together with the origins and the philosophy. And it's taken from the book by Poinselot, written in 2004, and you'll find it in chapter 1, and it is table 1.1. So gradually, the movement coalesced with the various parties coming together under one umbrella, and they called it sustainable agriculture. Academic research journals appeared in support of this movement, as did numerous books. Prominent non-government institutions led their support, and eventually the United States Department of Agriculture recognized its legitimacy. Research funds appeared from government sources and regional programs for sustainable agricultural research and education, and these came into existence through the university system in the United States. And of course, Australia soon followed. If you want to have a look at the history and the processes in Australia, there is a brief history of sustainable agriculture in Australia, and this can be found at that website displayed in this slide. So during much of this period,
Sustainable agriculture also sought to define itself. Many definitions emerged, as several forms of alternative farming existed. Very early in the game, three sets of philosophy emerged: economics, ecology, and sociology. And these sets have been placed in the context of three schools of thought: productivity, stewardship, and community. The diagram illustrates the journey that producers might involve themselves. Some would see biodynamic and organic horticulture as endpoints in this journey. But in the context of the Australian agricultural environment, any progress along this journey offers considerable benefits in terms of increased sustainability. So historically, it seems that production-oriented agriculture or horticulture has diverged from ecological-oriented agriculture or horticulture. However, an interesting paper by Duff, Hegedus, Lewin, Bass, and Maxwell, which was published in 2022, has come up with a unique approach. Uniting these two seemingly divergent paradigms of production-oriented and ecologically oriented agriculture into the form of precision agroecology. They claim merging precision agriculture technology and agroecological principles offers a unique array of solutions driven by data collection, experimentation, and decision support tools. They showed how the synthesis of precision technology and agroecological principles results in a new agriculture that can be transformative by 1. Reducing inputs with optimized prescriptions. 2. Substituting sustainable inputs by using site-specific variable rate technology. 3. Incorporating beneficial biodiversity into agroecosystems with precision conservation technology. 4. Reconnecting producers and consumers through value-based food chains. And 5. Building a just and equitable global food system informed by data-driven food policy. As a result, precision agroecology provides a unique opportunity to synthesize traditional knowledge and novel technology to transform food systems. In doing so, precision agroecology can offer solutions to agriculture's biggest challenges in achieving sustainability in a major state of global change. The ultimate definition made it possible for these various systems to coexist under the label of sustainable agriculture or horticulture. There was room for the organic farmer at one end of the sustainable agriculture continuum, just as there was room for the conventional farmer at the other end who adopted conservation tillage, integrated pest management, and lower inputs of fertilizer. To work, the definition needed to recognize 4 basic needs. Firstly, resources must be maintained through conservation, recycling, and/or renewal. Secondly, farming practices must not pollute the environment on or off the farm. Thirdly, levels of production, profitability, and the incentive to farm must not be compromised. And fourth, the system must operate in the realm of social and economic reality. And so ultimately, the Journal of Sustainable Agriculture, in its statement of purpose in the first issue in 1990, defined the term of sustainable agriculture as a system in which 1. Resources are kept in balance with their use through conservation, recycling, and or renewal. 2. Practices preserve agricultural resources and prevent environmental damage to the farm and off-site land, water, and air. 3. Production, profits, and incentives remain at acceptable levels. And 4. The system works in concert with socio-economic realities. So, what is sustainable agriculture? Well, it depends who you ask. So the definition covers all forms of agriculture, including agroecology, biodynamic farming, biological agriculture, ecological agriculture, environmentally sound agriculture, low input sustainable agriculture, organic farming, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, holistic farming, and even traditional conventional agriculture. However, all are related to the future. Probably the most accepted definition of sustainability is that of Brundtland, who in 1987 defined sustainability, which would apply to agriculture and horticulture, as meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So let's have a look at sustainability in horticulture. For the time being, we will set aside 3 of the 4 P's: production, profit, and people. And let's then look at certain aspects of the 4th P, planet, by way of an introduction to some environmental issues in the horticultural sector. Sustainable horticulture is in its infancy, perhaps even more so than sustainable agriculture. And numerous problems exist and need to be dealt with. The following few slides point out just a few examples of issues brought about by conventional horticulture. The first of these problems is the high losses of farm soil from water and wind erosion that have occurred. Just a reminder that while Australia makes up 6% of the world's land surface, it accounts for 19% of the world's soil erosion. A frightening statistic. Increased inputs of water are needed to compensate for reduced soil quality, or sometimes they were inefficient in the use of water, such as furrow irrigation illustrated here. Increased inputs of nutrients were needed to compensate for reduced soil quality. High losses of soil organic matter caused productive soils to become desert-like. Surface water and groundwater supplies were diminished by overdrafts. Water was also polluted with nutrients, pesticides, and soil, reducing the water quality, but also harming the ecology. Heavy use of fossil fuels, a non-renewable resource, continues, both on the farm and after the farm gate. Pesticides cause losses of beneficial insects and possible long-term damage to human health. And also, our plant genetic resources are being jeopardized. So much government effort, including research, education, consumer awareness, and political effort, will be needed to move the developed world to sustainable horticulture. Several practices on the farm can help bring about the transition. These involve more technological savvy on the part of the farmer. So, for example, reduced inputs of water and fertilizer through monitoring water use, in this case with tensiometers, or utilizing fertigation to be more specific in application of plant nutrients to the rooting zone. Reduced inputs of pesticides and encouraging beneficials to control pests. Increasing inputs of organic matter into the soil. Or conservation tillage by planting new crops into stubble left over from previous crops without turning over the soil. And more use of cover crops, for example, such as this barley being planted in a young walnut orchard. or more use of crop rotations, for example in vegetable farming, which helps to reduce pest and disease pressure and also helps to improve soil health. Improving crop diversity helps to reduce the pressure from pests by interplanting with crops that deter insects, for example, or utilizing deep-rooted crops to help improve soil structure. Better marketing opportunities will need to be developed, such as educating consumers, or pick your own vegetables, or farmers markets, or labeling produce with sustainable horticulture approved logos. Now, the changes will also need to be made beyond the farm gate. So food and agriculture policies that hinder sustainable horticulture need to be revised. Land use for farms will need to be protected. Better conditions for farm workers are needed to encourage more people onto the farms, especially horticultural farms. Rural communities will need help to hold the economic and population losses. And consumers will need education to raise their awareness and to encourage support for vegetables and fruits produced by sustainable horticultural farming systems. So how does the horticultural industry deal with sustainability? Who decides what needs to be done? How is it implemented? How is it policed? Now, in some cases, there are controls that are legislated. So, for example, labor employment, pesticide use and storage, land care aspects, or in the case of organics, for example, certain aspects are government regulated. In specific cases, there are private voluntary standards. Some examples are Global GAP, which is a global set of standards for good agricultural practice, or HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points, which is an internationally recognized method of identifying and managing food safety related risk. And it provides customers, the public, or regulatory agencies assurance that a food safety program is in place and well managed. Another example is that of Fresh Care, which is a recently promulgated Australian organization, and this provides assurance standards for fresh produce, specifically vegetables, fruits, and grapes. And then there are certification bodies which audit agricultural or horticultural enterprises, and they provide certificates of quality assurance or compliance against a set of standards. And just a few examples are Australian Certified Organic, which is a company which audits and certifies organic farms, or the Australian Sustainable Products, an organization which accredits operations against sustainable and regenerative agricultural standards. AusQual is another one which certifies operations against industry standards in the agricultural, horticultural, and secondary processing sectors, mainly in the red meat industry, but now also becoming involved in horticulture, poultry and eggs, food safety, organics, animal welfare, and social and ethical compliance. So to finish off, the theme of sustainable horticulture is carried throughout this subject. Whatever your own concept of sustainability is, whether it be organics on one side of the spectrum or right through to intensive industrial, mechanized, conventional horticulture, which is on the other side of the spectrum. In all cases, the focus is on ensuring it's economical through maintaining production and profit, taking care of environmental issues as well as social issues. At the end of the day, we want to meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So this overview of sustainability in horticulture gives a rather narrow view of mainly on-farm practices. But sustainability is a bigger issue than just on-farm practices. It focuses on global issues. So in the next section of topic 1, we will look at the big picture with respect to sustainability in agriculture or horticulture by following what the FAO has to say about sustainability in food and agriculture.